So if you're staring at a corpse of a dream, take it from me. Don't prolong its agony. It's time for a funeral. Mourn the loss. Refocus your life on your true identity and allow yourself to prepare for a resurrection when you will finally realize the dream was always about your transformation. Save yourself more heartache and let the dream die so you can experience the resurrection of the purpose you were created to fulfill. Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine Podcast. I'm your host, Daron Earlewine. So stoked to be sitting down one-on-one with you, talking about what's going on with the resurrection of your purpose. That's right. We're talking about the new book, Death of a Dream, Resurrecting Purpose When Life Doesn't Go as Planned, coming out October 18th, 2022. And I want you to get this book and be ready to rock and roll. Here's what I want to do. I want to do a little giveaway just to the podcast faithful. Here's what I want to do. If you pre-order the book right now on barnesandnoble.com, take a screenshot of the receipt of you buying it or the screen grab of that you pre-ordered it and email it to us. I want you to email Julie, Julie, Julie at blackbirdmission.com, and with the screenshot of ordering it, and send us a screenshot of that, and I am going to mail you a personalized autographed copy of the new book, write you a little message in there, and send you an autographed copy of the book. I'd love to do that for the first 10 people. Okay, we can't get all crazy, all right? First 10 people to pre-order, send us a screenshot of your pre-order and email it to Julie at blackbirdmission.com. I'm going to send you a free copy of the book, autographed and personalized to you, because I want you to have it, and I wanted to say thank you for helping the pre-orders go great for the launch on October 18th. So we're doing that. We're in this series, guys, Resurrection of Purpose, trying to figure out what are some of the steps we take to begin the process and to go through the process of seeing our purpose resurrected as we've walked through the death of the dream, and taking some of the principles, some quotes out of the book, just kind of give you a preview of what's in here, but unpack some of the content as well. And I hope you find it inspiring. Hope you find it instructive, and it's helping you take that next step. So we started last week. Talked about the first thing we got to do is got to believe it. We got to believe, right, that the resurrection of our purpose is possible. And to do that, we have to see that we can believe that life is unfair and God is with us. Both of these things are true and can exist. We believe it. And because those are true, resurrection of purpose is possible. The next steps I want to take you through today are key, and they're difficult, but guess what? This whole process is. But guess what? Everything that's worthy of your life in life is difficult. The easy stuff is the cheap stuff, right? The good stuff is always difficult. So here's the steps we're taking next. Here's what we got to do. We've got to mourn it. We've got to celebrate it. And we have to let it die. 3-step process there to move to the process of seeing your dreams resurrected. So when we're talking about it, we're talking about the death of your dream. In the book, I walk through the death of my childhood dream and the death of a couple of them as I pursued God's call on my life. We also weave around through the story of Joseph in the Old Testament and learn principles from his life. And Joseph had some pretty massive dreams die, at least what he thought they would be, the way that he thought they were going to look. And when you read the whole story of Joseph, we won't have time to go through it now, but it's in the book. It's amazing to see that what he saw as a child was this little dimly lit, blurry version that he could only really kind of understand and explain through his limited and immature and really arrogant perspective of what God was calling him to. And I'd like to say that we're way different than that. You know what I mean? Like, we really understood it, but we didn't. We're not any different than Joseph was. God was inviting Joseph into something that he actually used to save the entire nation of God's people and the people of Egypt. This was a massive massive purpose that God was inviting him into that he never would have actually found without the detours and dead ends and defining moments that the death of his dream took. And they are massive, and you read through the story. And all along the way for Joseph, all along the way for me, all the way along for you. And the story I want to pick up today is the whole process for Mary and Martha and their friend Lazarus. Went through this process of mourning what was lost, celebrating it, and then letting it die. There's something in your life. There's a purpose that there's a dream that you had, and it's dead or dying. And here's the danger for all of us, is in our confusion, in our anger, in us pounding our fist on the table and saying, this isn't fair. The danger for us is to try to keep the anger, to not allow ourselves to actually step into a season of mourning. And the real danger is to try to prop up this dead dream and keep it on life support for way too long. The longer we do that, the longer we delay the process to actually see this dead dream become a resurrected purpose. Let's jump into this story. I love the story of Lazarus and Mary and Martha in the New Testament. I talk about it in the book. And there's this crazy moment. What I pull out in the book, and it's from the Message paraphrase, is it's an odd moment. Let's put it that way. And here's how the odd moment breaks down: is Mary and Martha, they know that Lazarus, their brother, is sick, and they know that he's a great friend of Jesus. And so they send a message to Jesus and say, "Hey, Jesus, the one you love, like, this is your bro. He's sick, and we think he may die. We need you to come and, do some Jesus stuff and heal him." The message gets to Jesus, and the scripture says, but oddly, Jesus stayed where he was for 2 more days. Oddly. And it is odd, because the reality is, and Mary and Martha say as much to Jesus when he shows up 2 days after, 2 days, I think, after, 4 days. When Jesus finally shows up, he found Lazarus already 4 days dead. So Jesus stays where he's at. Lazarus is 4 days dead. And they tell Jesus, had you been here, you could have fixed this. And guess what? They were right. But oddly enough, Jesus did what Jesus did, because Jesus knew what Jesus was going to do. And guys, when we have these but oddly enough moment, the sad, unfair, and oddly enough situations happen, we really get obsessed wanting God to tell us why. Hey, why'd this happen? Why didn't you answer the prayer the way I wanted you to answer? Why did this happen? Why'd you allow this? Why? And the difficult part is I think sometimes, maybe even most of the time, we're not going to get the exact why. And if we do, it's not going to be for years later when we begin to see what God was actually up to and where he was leading us. And we never get there without going to the process of really understanding who he is, what his character is, and that we can trust him. Because I want to add something. I said we got to mourn it, celebrate it, and let it die. I want to add a phrase in between those that goes back to what we said the first time, is we have to mourn it with him. We have to celebrate it with him. And we have to let it die with him. We got to mourn. We got to celebrate. You look at what Mary and Martha did. They were confused about it. But as it says, when Jesus gets there, right, Bethany was near Jerusalem and only a couple miles away, and many of the Jews were visiting Mary and Martha, sympathizing with them over their brother. So when Jesus shows up, they're already in the process of mourning and celebrating Lazarus' life. And I mean this when I say this. I say this in the book, and I can't remember what page it's on, but I talk about that if you're in this place and you've had a dream die, I do think you actually need to have a funeral for it. Now, if part of your dream was actually losing a loved one, you had done this. But if it was just losing a dream, a business, a relationship, something like me where it was a ministry and a band, whatever it is, I mean this seriously, is take the time to mourn it and celebrate it. It may be lost, it may be dead, but that doesn't mean you can't sit around with the people that you love, right? Empty a box of Kleenex, right? Cry it out, hug it out, have a moment to celebrate the good that came from that. It could even be that you're looking at a situation where you're walking through a divorce and you say, Darren, I don't know that I can find anything good in this. I bet you can. I bet you can go back and you can find some things that you can celebrate through. And the reason that's important is because gratitude is something that actually leads us to rediscover joy on the backside of this pain. So, Jesus gets there, and with him, they're mourning and they're celebrating the loss of Lazarus. But then this next step, and this is one of the biggest ones, okay? So if you've mourned it with Jesus and you've celebrated it with Jesus, here's the last one. You have to let it die. You got to let it die. I think about this story right here. Like the image I got as I was thinking about put these notes together was like, what if Mary and Martha would have refused? Like, listen, I know we sent message to Jesus. He didn't come from 2 days. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. But listen, I think Jesus is going to fix this. He's got the power. So what if they would have shown up and they would have had Lazarus like propped up at the kitchen table, right? I mean, obviously rigor mortis already set in. Jesus shows up, like they're like, he's going to fix this, and like Lazarus is like sitting, at the kitchen table. It would have been disturbing to say the least, right? It would have been disgusting to say the most. You got a dead guy already in the process of probably decomposing. He's 4 days dead, and they got him propped up at the kitchen table going like, we're not going to believe it. Jesus is going to come through for us. Jesus is going to come through for you. But guess what, guys? Let him die. And they did, right? He was in a tomb. They had let it go. And you got to let these dreams die. I tell stories here in the book. I hope you get a chance to read it. About I kept my dream of my music dream of being in a band. I kept it on life support for about a decade, and it did more damage than it did good to my life and the people around me. And in that process, there weren't moments that I necessarily sensed that God was saying, this is what I'm calling you to. I am resurrecting this opportunity. When I look back on it, the bottom line was my dream was dead years ago, and I just kept it on life support. Don't do it. You got to let it go. I talk about this on page 77 of the book. Let me read it for you. It says this. We are not our pain, loss, or former dreams. For me, learning to rediscover myself required a different understanding of myself and God. Just as I cannot go back in time, God isn't stuck in the past where things went wrong. Sure, we can see his faithfulness by looking back, but his presence is experienced right here, right now. And when we will learn to just be and allow his presence to be with us in this moment, we can better understand his passion for creating a future that is built moment by moment. I know it's tough. In these moments where we have to let these dreams die, and we walk through these difficult things, like I said in the last episode, guys, they attack our what we don't know, our false presuppositions about God and about his character and about what he'll allow us to go through. And those are good things, because I don't want to live my life by false assumptions about myself or false assumptions. I don't want to live deceived about who God is. I want to know who he is. I want to know how he works in my life. I want to see his faithfulness. In this situation with Mary and Martha, they did. They did. This moment attacked some of their presuppositions when they went out, right? And they met up with Jesus, right? They were like, "What's the deal, Jesus? Like, we sent word, Lazarus is someone you love. This is not supposed to be the way this works. And I'm sure you have thought that. Like, listen, I went to church my whole life, or this is the difficult part. It's like, I haven't gone to church my whole life. Like, I started listening to your podcast there. I took spiritual DNA. I thought things were going to be great. And then my husband left me. Or whatever your story is. I thought following Jesus was supposed to be the golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory if everything goes great and it's just rainbows and butterflies all the time. And since I started getting serious following Jesus, I keep having one negative situation after the other happen. This is not what I supposed it was supposed to be. What's the deal? And that was with what the passion that Mary and Martha brought to Jesus. Like, this isn't the way it's supposed to work. How is he 4 days dead? And like I said before, in these moments, we may not know why. But as Mary and Martha experienced, and I've experienced, and I know that you have too if you've been walking with Jesus, is you do get to know who he is. And what I think is interesting in these moments is one of the most powerful scriptures, I think, in the whole Bible is in this story. Because Jesus shows up, and yeah, oddly enough, he's 4 days late. And they're mourning it, they're celebrating that life, and they're confused. And when Jesus sees the pain of their confusion and of the pain of losing someone that was dear to them, it doesn't say Jesus condemned them, told them to shut up, stop crying, suck it up, get tough. No, it says something really amazing and really compassionate. It says that Jesus wept. When Jesus saw her sobbing and the Jews with her sobbing, he asked, "Where did you put him?" And then he wept. And the Jews said, "Look how deeply he loved him." God empathizes with our pain, our sorrow, with our mourning. In your heartbreak, sorrow, and confusion about the death of your dream, Jesus offers compassion, empathy, and presence. He weeps with you. I want you to feel that. I want you to embrace that. I'm putting these thoughts together here in these short podcasts, and just trying to give you, things that you can kind of memorize. 3 points of this mourning and celebrating it and letting it die. But I don't want it to come across flippantly, like I'm like, just get over it, or saying that that's what Jesus is saying. This process is difficult, and I know that. I've walked through it multiple times. But I've walked through it enough times to know that you can embrace it, and you can embrace him because he's embracing you through it. He weeps when you weep. He empathizes. He shows you compassion and patience. He's a really good God. But there's even better news about this story, and there's better news about where you are right now, because Jesus isn't just a God who weeps with you, which is great, but he's a God that has the power to resurrect your purpose in your life. Because before Jesus weeps in this, he says something amazingly powerful to Mary and to Martha. In verse 25, before he weeps, he gave them a vision. He gave them a promise that they could stake their life on. He says this: you don't have to wait until the end. I am right now resurrection and life. The one who believes in me, even though he or she dies, will live. And everyone who lives believing in me does not ultimately die at all. Do you believe this? Jesus says, I am the resurrection and life. And here's what I believe, guys. When he says, listen, you won't die, right? He's talking about eternal life, which is true. Because of what Jesus does, we never have to die. We just kind of transform and transmit. Like we just kind of move on. We move out of this life and this age to the age to come, where we're going to have a glorified body, where we're going to actually live eternally with Jesus in paradise, in heaven. So you don't ever actually stop existing. That's a great hope. But I love what Jesus is saying here is those who live believing in me. Nothing that you go through does he not have the power to resurrect. Some type of purpose from it. Do you believe it? Back to what we said in episode 1 of this process of how do you resurrect purpose. You got to believe it. That what Jesus just said to Mary and Martha applies to you, and you can see him begin to resurrect the purpose. When you do, when you mourn it, when you celebrate it, when you let it die, guess what you can do? I love it. Jesus goes on in this situation and he says this, listen, remove the stone. And then he calls out Lazarus, and Lazarus comes out of the grave. And this process that Jesus is walking us through, he wants to remove all the stones that are keeping you grave tending a dead dream. You know, I think the interesting thing about this one is that Lazarus comes out, right? And he's all wrapped up in grave clothes. Doesn't quite look like he probably looked before because he's all wrapped up. And then Jesus is like, hey, listen, take off the grave clothes and let him go. And I think about it's also an interesting story about when Jesus comes back from the dead, at the beginning of it, right? The disciples didn't recognize him. And we don't really get a breakdown of did he look different or what was it that they didn't? Did he allow them not to recognize him? I don't know what happened there, but I think it's interesting that with Lazarus, who's all wrapped up in grave clothes, when Jesus comes back, they don't recognize him to begin with. And what I want you to know is this, is when God begins this process of removing the stone and resurrecting a new purpose, it's probably going to look different to you than you thought your dream was going to begin with. It might even be difficult for you to recognize as the resurrection of your purpose. But if you'll walk with him, if you'll mourn this, celebrate it, let it die, and begin to let him remove the stones that are keeping you tending a dead dream, you will begin to see that purpose resurrected, and he will open your eyes for you to see it the way he sees it and to move you forward. I want to read last couple paragraphs here from page 81 and 82 as our kind of closing thought today, and we'll let it go. It says this: even when we don't get it, if we're willing to trust Jesus with our dreams, we will eventually experience the joy of resurrection. Because dreams have a life cycle. They have a birth, a life, and a death. But here's the best part. Dreams also have a resurrection. They may take on a different appearance. Not even Jesus' closest friends recognized him after his resurrection. When you let a dream die and leave it in Jesus' hands, you may not recognize it at first when it rises from the mist, but the real miracle only happens when you stop trying to figure it all out and let it go. That is when God can take the abilities, talents, and determination that has been knit into your DNA and accomplish things through you never thought possible. So if you're staring at a corpse of a dream, take it from me, don't prolong its agony. It's time for a funeral. Mourn the loss, refocus your life on your true identity, and allow yourself to prepare for a resurrection when you will finally realize the dream was always about your transformation. Save yourself more heartache and let the dream die so you can experience the resurrection of the purpose you were created to fulfill. It's the next step in the process of resurrecting this purpose. I believe you can do it. More than that, I believe that God can do it in and through you. Listen, the three things I say to you every episode apply so much in this process, and I believe it for you. I want you to believe it for yourself, and I can't wait to talk to you guys next week as we unpack the next step, which is this: forgive it. Whew, it's going to be a doozy. Until we jump into that conversation next week, remember these three things. God is for you, not against you. He is near you in this process, not far away. And he has created you on purpose and for the purpose he's going to resurrect in your life. See you guys next time right here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast.